site.
Yeah. Boomer and Carton on the Fan, live Convention Center, Houston, Texas. Super Bowl 51. This is not the same kind of vibe as Super Bowl 50 or 55 or 60 or any other numbers that seem to mean something to us. Now, I would never bring this next guest on our show. I just wouldn't do it. It's not my style to do it, especially since he's such a big star.
Peter King
gets his own Chalk Talk segment over at the Fan with Gary Myers,
yes.
who hates our guts. But Peter King is here, and we figured it's Tuesday. Boomer's bored already anyway. Let's find out what's going on.
It's Tuesday. We got to kill some time.
That's all
Let's
this
bring
is.
King on.
You know what, Peter? I told these guys last night, I said, listen, can you just be nice to one of my friends just once?
We're all
please?
good. We've always
No.
Peter goes back. Peter and I go back, and you know the story.
Yes.
Go all the way back to my rookie year in Cincinnati when he picked me up at the airport in his Volkswagen thing or whatever.
Volkswagen Rabbit.
Whatever
Still
it was.
amazing.
It's a
That's your
two-door
place.
car.
Yes.
A two-door car. And Boomer comes in from Maryland, bitter at the world because Bobby Beathard didn't draft him.
Right.
And he comes in bitter at the world, but he comes in with a 6'5", 290-pound, puffed-up defensive end named Pete Koch.
Right.
And
Who's another
Pete
draft
Koch,
pick, right?
Yeah, he was the first-round pick, and Boomer is the second-round pick, and Pete Koch is there. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, somebody's going to have to sit in the back seat.
Right, you.
And I should have let Boomer drive. But anyway, Boomer gets in the back seat. He folds himself in there. He's sitting sideways in the back seat.
Welcome to the pros.
Hey, he said, no, Boomer didn't say welcome to the pros. Boomer said, welcome to the bleeping NFL with disgust in his voice. The Bengals couldn't even send a car for him.
Right.
It's amazing. And then you were covering them. Were you a beat reporter?
That was my rookie year covering
Even
the NFL.
weirder that they asked someone who covers the team. They do us a favor.
They didn't? No.
Oh, they
no,
didn't?
I'll tell you what happened. I went out there because I said, I'm going to go pick them up. And they had a car there to pick them up, but I just told them at the gate, I'm here to pick you up. And they
Look at
said,
you.
okay.
Enterprise
And
reporter.
at the time, there's no security at airports.
Right.
You just walk right up to the gate.
Right, exactly.
That's
It was
great.
crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but boom, so when Peter comes up, if you may not remember, and he introduces himself, Peter King, I cover the Bengals, whatever. I've got your ride. That didn't seem weird because you didn't know any better,
I
right?
had no idea. No, and I had argued that I wanted to play in the NFL. I did not want to play in the USFL because USFL was obviously an opportunity for me. I could have went there if I wanted to, like Jim Kelly did and Steve Young did. But I wanted to play in the NFL. And I had a press conference saying I wanted to play in the NFL about a month prior to the draft. My agent, David Falk, hated me for doing that because he said that I lost leverage. And I said, I don't care about it. I want to play in the NFL. I grew up loving the NFL. I don't want to go to some podunk league that's never going to make it. And then, sure enough,
Who had your rights?
the Washington Federals.
Okay.
Then I fall to the second round, and then there you are to pick me up, and I'm pissed.
But the amazing thing about that draft was, if you think about it, Steve Young convinced the Bengals that because Lee Steinberg was his guy, and he had got him all this money in the USFL.
Right.
Steve Young would have been
the number one overall
number one pick. He would have been picked by the Bengals when Steve Young signed in the USFL in 1984. That led to Boomer Esiason getting picked by the Bengals because then they didn't have their quarterback, and the number 2 guy on their draft list that year, number 2 guy at quarterback on their board was Boomer Esiason. It was Steve Young and then Boomer.
Huh. I mean, that's how little stories like that change your life.
Well, they do.
forever.
They do.
Right?
And at the end of the day, I was with Sam Weish. It was the right guy for me.
Yeah.
Would you
It really
agree to
was
this?
crazy.
It was utterly
Would Steve Young be a
Yes.
Hall of Famer today if he went to the Bengals?
Well, you'd have to answer the question this way. Bill Walsh loved Steve Young. He loved him from the time he was in Brigham Young, and he had a thing. He was going to get Steve Young someday. And he ended up getting Steve Young. Could he have ever convinced Mike Brown to trade Steve Young? I doubt it. Because Mike Brown just would not trade a franchise quarterback. So then you have to ask, what would Steve Young have been like with Sam Weich? And I think he would have had a
Just as
career
good,
much
right?
like Boomer, with one exception. Boomer threw a much better deep ball than Steve Young. And so he did. And so that's the one thing that you can always wonder, would Steve Young have taken the Bengals as far as Boomer did to a Super Bowl?
I just always think of Steve Young as a really athletic, smart, just dedicated player. I have nothing but the utmost respect for him and the way that he played. And he was in the right spot because when he was in Tampa, it didn't work.
He was getting killed.
He couldn't handle it in Tampa. Went and sat. I felt bad because in our Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 23, he was the backup quarterback to Joe Montana.
Right.
And I always felt like, man, this guy should be playing not over Joe Montana, but somewhere in the league.
The other funny thing about all of the Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, Steve Young thing. Do you realize that in 1979, the quarterback that Bill Walsh desperately wanted was Phil Simms?
Yes.
In 1979. So remember, Bill Walsh and his rookie quarterback coach, Sam Weich, they went around the country. The two big quarterbacks that year were Phil Simms and a guy named Steve Fuller from Clemson. So they went and scouted these guys, and Walsh loved Phil Simms. And he always thought if we had Phil Simms, we would have been just as good or maybe better because Phil Simms had a better deep arm than Montana. He loved him. But then, obviously, the Giants took Simms early in the first round.
So he loved Montana, Young, and Simms.
Yes, he did.
Not bad.
Pretty good eye for talent,
and he got Montana.
But he also told me, I'll tell you this, God rest his soul, he also told me in 1998, that was the Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning draft year, and I took a videotape of 30 plays of Peyton Manning, 30 plays of Ryan Leaf, and I flew around the country to 6 what I considered quarterback experts. Bill Walsh was one, Sid Gilman was another one, the late Sid Gilman. But anyway, and so Bill Walsh had a very famous quote to me in that thing. I said, who would you take? And all 6 guys like Peyton Manning better. But I said, if you had the first pick, who would you take? Walsh said, I wouldn't take one of these guys. I'd either use the pick on a defensive player or I'd trade down and I'd take Brian Greasy.
Really?
That's what Bill Walsh said. And I mean, that is, oops, yeah. Even though, hey, Greasy in the right offense.
Could have been good. Yeah. And his offense would have been, I think, a lot better player than he ended up turning out to be.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Of talking to Peter King, who's with SeatGeek, as I am as well, download the SeatGeek app. Every ticket you purchase is 100% guaranteed. And they also give you they rank and rate every single ticket there, so you know you're not being taken advantage of. If there's a ticket for sale, they give you a score, and that way you know that you're getting a great price for the seat that you want. So check out SeatGeek. Make sure you download the app immediately, and check out SeatGeek before you buy tickets anywhere else. Of the young quarterbacks, Mariota, Winston, etc., who of the young guys, the guys in the league, let's say, no more than 3 years, do you think's got the best shot of emerging as the guy?
Marcus Mariota. First of all, he's got 2 great tackles, Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin. You ask Boomer, why do you have the success you have? Okay, I mean, he's got the best tackle of all time to his left, Anthony Munoz. And they got a great offensive line in general.
Yep.
Okay, that was a huge part of the success of that Cincinnati team. And to me, right now, they've got the best young tackle tandem in football. He's got a very good young running back in Derrick Henry, obviously DeMarco Murray. And their general manager, I think, is Belichickian, who trained under Belichick, John Robinson. I think he's got the best chance because he's got the best supporting cast, too.
All right. I brought this up yesterday. I want to get your take on it. And I want you to listen with all sincerity.
Go ahead.
I don't want you to say, oh, it's Carton's idea, I'm throwing it out. You need to contemplate this. And I've worked it out with Boomer. He's down with it as it makes sense.
I could see it happening.
You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me finish the whole thing before you react.
You're crazy.
Maybe true. Tony Romo goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Alex Smith comes to the New York Jets. Bang.
It's not stupid at all.
See that, Al? Not stupid at all. Told you we should book
It's
him.
sensible. It is sensible because the Jets don't have the patience right now to either give Hackenberg a trial year or to pick another guy and get back on the quarterback merry-go-round. You know, right now you get a B minus, B plus quarterback on a given Sunday who's not going to turn it over. Who is going to do what Todd Bowles wants him to do. My only problem with that is that Tony Romo is a piece of fine china, and he breaks. And that's the biggest problem. If you take Tony Romo, you better have a really good backup quarterback behind him.
The thing that I think is we're talking to Peter King from NBC and obviously Monday Morning Quarterback. My thing, Peter King, that's right.
Peter King.
My thing is that Tony Romo, first of all, needs to go somewhere else. He does not need to stay in Dallas. Does not need to take less money. I think that Andy Reid has gone as far as he can go with Alex Smith. And if you watch the game between them and the Pittsburgh Steelers, there are guys running wide open all over the place, and Alex is just not pulling the trigger. He's just not throwing the ball. And as much as I admire and I like Alex, I think he's wore out. I don't say wore out is welcome, but I just think he's gone as far as he can go in Kansas City. And if you're Kansas City, you got to say, what are we doing with this team, and how are we going to get this team to the next level, and maybe take a flyer on Tony Romo. That's why this makes sense from a standpoint.
I think it makes more sense than what each team will do next year.
Right, exactly.
That makes more sense. The only thing you'd have to do if you take Tony Romo, man, you better build a suit of armor around him. You better have a great offensive line.
I'll tell you one thing. Watching him in Philadelphia that last game, he could throw, man. The guy could still throw.
No question about it.
He is accurate. He's smart. And I think he and Andy Reid, that's a good pairing. And it's away from the Cowboys.
Yeah.
It's in the AFC. And I think, as Jerry Jones has said, I think he admires Tony Romo. I think he likes Tony Romo. But
the reason why Jerry Jones will do a solid for Tony Romo versus almost any player who's ever played for the Dallas Cowboys. So I don't know if you noticed this, but Jerry Jones' grandson, Stephen Jones' son, Stephen John Jones,
quarterback.
He's a high school
quarterback.
player, right?
They won the state championship, Highland Park High School. That's where Matthew Stafford went. And at that last game, there was video, and there's Tony Romo sitting with Jerry
Jones. They're tight.
Okay? Not only are they tight, but one of the reasons why he's at the game is Tony Romo coached this kid over the last few years. He'd go to the Cowboys facility, and Romo would spend time with him. He went to a bunch of his games this year.
Yeah,
he loves this kid. So it's a little bit more than just player.
They'll do right by him, which says a lot.
And Tony also did a solid. I know he went to them and said, hey, I want a chance at starting this year because this is a great team, and I'd like to be out there.
But I'm not going to make waves.
But I'm not going to make waves. So he did the right thing. Hey, as I talked to you this morning, your thoughts about John Lynch coming out of nowhere and getting the GM job.
Shocking.
6 years. 6 years. He's going to be, I guess, on top of the draft. He's also going to be required. I guess he's going to be the 90-man roster builder. And then Kyle Shanahan will take over there from the 53-man roster and all that other stuff.
So I talked to Jed York, the CEO of the Niners, and this is all about trying to hit a home run instead of trying to hit a ground rule double. That's what it comes down to. Jed York believes that the marriage, I've always believed this, Boomer, for the longest time, that when there are these arranged marriages between a coach and a general manager, a coach shows up and they say, hey, here's the general manager. Here's the two most important people in a franchise other than the quarterback. Here's the two most important people, and they barely know each other.
Well, it's kind of like the Jets.
Yeah.
And plus you have two guys. There's not really a boss. And they're both bringing it to the owner, which doesn't really make much sense to me. But how is this structure going to work out? Who is the boss of who in this situation?
At the end of the day, you said it right. I mean, John Lynch is going to make the decisions on draft day. Kyle Shanahan is going to make the decisions on the roster. But I think the reason why I think John Lynch has a chance, I've always thought this about him, and I know him well. He knows what he doesn't know. He's not going in there ordering people around. He's going in there saying, hey, take me under your wing and tell me how to scout.
Now, is he hiring the people to support him, like the Mark Dominics of the world, the former GMs?
He is going to, yes.
He's the guy that's responsible for that.
He's going to figure out which of the current scouts on the staff. Like, for instance, they have a guy there named Tom Gamble, who is Chip Kelly's guy. And Tom Gamble, widely respected.
The guy from Philadelphia.
Yeah, widely respected in the scouting community. Jed York hopes that they get along to the point that he becomes I'll take you under my wing, John, and I'm going to teach you this.
Well, that'd be like having Al Dukes make all decisions for the fans.
The interesting thing, because I was talking to Phil Simms about this yesterday. You know, Phil's a broadcaster there every day.
Simms!
Right, exactly. So, but, he would be a guy that you would think that may love to do something like that, be involved in some way, shape, or form like that. My thing would be like what you want what Brendan Shanahan has for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They hired
Lou
him as
Lamoriello.
Well, they hired Brendan as the face and the president of the franchise. They said to him, you're going to go out and you're going to hire the coach and the general manager. He convinces Babcock to leave Detroit, come run the Maple Leafs, and then he convinces Lou Lamoriello, I believe, to come out of retirement or maybe just leave the Devils and come run from a general manager standpoint and a player standpoint the Toronto Maple Leafs. And now Brendan Shanahan is insulated because he's made those decisions, bringing 2 Hall of Famers, young team, trade away some assets, bring some young kids in there, and Brendan Shanahan's done an unbelievable job. But he's not the guy that's running around looking at all the other guys in the underwear.
Well, in John Elway, here's the thing. John Elway does not go scout in Ames, Iowa on a Thursday night to see about the 5th-round tight end. That's Tom Heckert. That's Matt Russell. That's the Denver guys. He has made his sort of team.
I'm kind of surprised that Jed York didn't go to an ex-49er in this situation, like a Steve Young or somebody. I'm not sure that Steve would want that job or anything, but it's kind of interesting that he took a player. Now, John may have a great weekend this weekend. He may be named to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You would know better than I would. But the fact is that he went and hired a guy that played for Mike Shanahan.
Right.
So Kyle knows him from those days, I'm sure.
Very well.
It's kind of an interesting situation.
Yeah, very interesting.
Last thing for you, Peter King's here. SeatGeek, by the way, Super Bowl 51 tickets. According to SeatGeek, the cheapest ticket is just under $2,500, which for a Super Bowl is actually inexpensive. They obviously, everyone would wish it would be the Cowboys and the Packers.
Wait until Saturday.
Under
In my
1,000?
opinion, I don't think it'll be under 1,000. But here's the thing: this week, you knew when Atlanta got in that the tickets were going to drop. Okay,
sure.
If Dallas or Green Bay was in, the tickets would be through the roof.
Yep.
So to me, Atlanta being in helps the football fan who wants to go on SeatGeek on Saturday and get a ticket for $1,700.
Yeah, you'll get it for under $2,000. Face value is like $1,500. Right?
I thought face value for like club seats is like $2,320.
I don't know, but in any event, you can get your.
How
Super
about last night? People paying $20 to go sit in the stands and watch the Patriots and Falcons be interviewed.
It's like the Combine.
I mean, you know,
it's like the Combine. They did the same thing with the Combine.
By the way,
So
that's why when anyone says the NFL's losing its popularity, they should stop talking right away.
Hey, quickly, JPP, is he a Giant or is he somewhere else?
I don't think that Jerry Reese is going to go crazy about Jason Pierre-Paul.
If I were the Green Bay Packers, I would go after Jason
If I were the
Pierre-Paul.
Dallas Cowboys, I would go after
Either
Jason
one of those two.
Pierre-Paul.
Here's my last question for
Yeah.
you, Peter King, of course. Joe Klecko. At any point are you knuckleheads going to put him in the Hall of Fame?
I believe that Joe Klecko deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.
Why
He's
doesn't
the
he
only
get in?
guy. He's the only guy to ever on a defensive line to make the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions.
When the Pro Bowl
Has he-
votes
has
count.
When the Pro Bowl votes matter.
Has he gotten close?
Joe Klecko does not have a lot of steam with him, but to me, there's a couple of guys who are, I don't want to say my pet guys, but I believe are vastly underrated by our committee. One is Joe Klecko, one is Steve Tasker.
How about Kenny Anderson?
Kenny Anderson should be an excellent candidate, I think.
Do you think Klecko ever gets in?
Could he get in like in the Kenny Easley category?
in the seniors committee. Do I think he'll ever get in? No, but I think he should be in.
You ask any player, Peter, I don't know how much you guys value the guys that vote and you argue over it, and we all hear about the stories and all that other stuff. But when you talk to any player that's ever played Joe Klecko, they'll tell you that he was the hardest guy that they had to play against. That goes, you could talk to Anthony Munoz, you could talk to Dave Remington, you could talk to Bruce Kazerski, you could talk to Joe Walter. They'll all tell you, and they all play 3 different positions.
Yeah.
Max Montoya.
Yeah.
They'll tell you that he
Peter
was
go, Boom.
amazing.
We have a
yes.
lot to do, and it's not all.
I'm
bad.
actually like talking
You
football.
reminiscing
We have a
about
lot
the
to
men.
do, and it doesn't involve King.
Thanks, Peter.
All right,
Have a
guys.
great week,
man.
I'll see you.
See ya.
That's Peter King, of course. Check out SeatGeek.
Peter King.
Download